Hey everyone, welcome to the EdTech Show. I'm Dan Spada, and in today's episode, we're discussing how to teach your students to become expert researchers and avoid fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. So today's episode is all about research, and this is perhaps the single most important skill we can teach our students. Now, some of you might have seen my video last year or seen my presentation, which was called Don't Research Like My Grandma. The response I got from that was overwhelming, and I've had so many teachers reaching out to me asking for support, asking how they can help their students become better researchers. So I've actually gone ahead and I have updated that presentation. So there's a new one that's available. It is in the description below, but we're also going to be going through it today. So even though this video accompanies that presentation, even without the presentation, you'll be able to see all the important highlights and things that are covered in the presentation. And if you are just here because you want to learn about how to help your students avoid fake news, disinformation, misinformation, I'm going to put the time code right here so you can fast forward ahead. But we're going to begin the video talking about how to help your students become better researchers using Google and some of the search engines and some tips and tricks that they can use. So before I even get started with research with the students, I like to show them this short video, and this one in the presentation has actually been updated, but it shows you what actually goes on behind the scenes of a Google search. So once a student goes in, they type something, what is Google actually doing? And I think that's good for them to set the table with understanding what exactly is a search engine. How does it work? Because Google isn't the internet, it's just an index of the internet, and I think that's lost on a lot of students. So there's some really cool information to get them thinking before we even start showing them how to become better searchers. So one of the things that the video talks about is not being able to pay Google for a better ranking. But one of the things that it doesn't really talk about is that you can pay Google to put ads in, and sometimes those ads appear above the actual index. So it would appear as though those are the best search results when they're really not. So I have a couple examples I like to show the students, right? So here's one that's Fortnite, and you can see right at the top above the index is an ad for Fortnite, and down on the sides is another ad. And another search that shows on the ads is, here you can see this is a PS4, and you can see not only is it just say ad in a green box, but there's also something above that that says sponsored. So both of those are ads that are placed in there, and you have to go through those before you even get to the top of the search index, which the students know is what Google thinks is the best result for what they're looking for. And one of the things I threw in, because I think it's really interesting and I think students need a little bit of practice with this, is finding ads embedded into websites. So here's an example from Yahoo Finance. And you can see right in the middle, it looks just like a regular article, is an ad about a man. It says he made $2.8 million trading on his lunch break, which is just a crazy thing. And, students could look at that and think, oh, wow, that's a great article. What's it all about? Now, the interesting thing is when I was creating this presentation, I found this ad. I thought it was great to put in. I went back later in the day and I found a different version of the same ad that says California man makes $2.8 million trading from home. And it's just kind of funny because it talks about the same person and it has completely different information in there. But again, you can see it looks just like a regular ad. And I think the important point to drive home here with students is they don't necessarily read. I know that's a shocking thing for a lot of you, but students go through and they are so quick to click on things that it's very easy to see that tiny gray wording there that says ad. So they need to slow down, become critical thinkers, because as we go on in this presentation, you're going to see the stakes get a lot higher. So now we get to the part where I like to have students practice their search queries. Now, the interesting thing here is in the last couple years, so many people type in full questions and full sentences to these search engines that they really have adapted to this. But we want our students to become better researchers. So we're going to talk about using the most important words, because not only will this help them in their internet searches, but as they get older and start using databases, they're going to want to know how to use important search queries, because you can't type in a full question in some of the databases. And it's also important that when we go forward, I'm going to show some examples of how one word or one letter can actually change the entire result. So here's just a couple examples. You know, I tell them, my sister wants to know if cell phones really are dirtier than a toilet handle in a men's bathroom, right? Just kind of a silly, engaging idea. And so which words of these should you use to create a search? And of course, the answer is cell phones, toilet handle. And it does turn out that they actually are dirtier than a toilet handle. It can actually carry 18 times more potentially harmful germs, which is kind of disgusting. But one of the important things here is you can have students go through and try their own searches. And if they don't put the word handle in, so if they just typed in cell phones toilet, they're not going to get that information right away. It's a little bit buried. They're going to get different information about people using cell phones on the toilets and stuff. So really every word here is important. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. But now, some of the fun tips and tricks. The basic and most used one, I think, is using quotation marks for an exact match. So the example I give is bingo tips and tricks. So without using quotation marks, you can see that the number of results I get back is 85,700,000. And when I use the quotation marks, it's actually reduced to 2,490. And it is super important that you stress to students that Google, Bing, whatever search engine they're using is only going to find the quotation, whatever's inside the quotation marks exactly as it's written. So if the students have a typo in there, that's what they're going to be looking for. So they have to be very careful with how they're searching. A few more tips and tricks, I'll go through these kind of fast, is, you know, if they want to exclude a word from the search, they can put the minus sign in front of it. So like if they wanted to do Lions, you know, if I just type in Lions, I get a lot of stuff about the Detroit Lions. If I type in Lions minus Detroit, I just get stuff about the animal. Using the word site with a colon will help students find a specific site. So if you wanted information from a direct site, so say they were looking for, they wanted Minecraft videos. If they just type Minecraft into Google, these are the results they'll get on the left there. It's a whole bunch of stuff about Minecraft. If they want to find just videos from YouTube about Minecraft, they can type in site:youtube.com space Minecraft, and now all the results they're going to get are just from YouTube. Another cool trick is if they want to find a related site. So they found one site they like and they want to see if there's other sites like that, they can type in related, then colon, and then another website. So for instance, if they wanted to find another website that was similar to Netflix, they could type in related:netflix.com, and the search results they're going to get are all streaming media services. So Blockbuster, which I actually had no idea was still around. It is, I checked. Hulu, Flickster, so all sites that are similar to Netflix. Another cool one that a lot of students don't know about is finding the cache version of a website. So every once in a while, Google or the other major search engines will take a backup of each website. So if you type in cache colon and then a website, it will actually show you a previous version of that site. So my example, I did cache colon ESPN.com, and you can see on the top, that was the current version of when I did my search. And then when I checked the cached version, it was the site from the day before. So it's a way to kind of go back in time and see what a website looked like at a time that was previous to the time of searching. And perhaps the most important tool that we can present students with is the advanced search. Now, a lot of students don't know about this, but it can really help them find exactly what they're looking for. So here you can see you can put in all the important words, exact words. You can put in none of these words. So like all those things that we just learned, all those tips and tricks can all be done right from the advanced Google search. The last thing we'll talk about before we kind of get into some of these other tools is Google Trends. This is one of my favorite tools to use. So you can see the search trends for different search terms. And this is really customizable where you can look through location, you can look through time period, you can decide whether you want it to be Google searches, YouTube searches, and you can compare all these terms and it gives you a nice graph that shows you what the more popular search terms are. And then this is where we can kind of have a lot of fun with the students because these are 4 lessons that are right from Google, and these are really important for students to know because this is where they can become those real expert researchers. And I like to set it up as a true or false. Poll the students, let them have some fun with this. So true or false, every word in your search matters. and I give them an example and let them try it out. After they take a guess, true or false, let them try it out. So like every word. So Google who, the who, and a who, and you'll see you get 3 very different results. One, you get World Health Organization. One, you get the band, The Who. And one, you get Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who. Every letter matters. Let them try dial versus dials. And you're going to see they get 2 different results. One is about soap, and one is about a dial like they were thinking. True or false word order in your search matters. Let them try blue sky versus sky blue, and they'll get 2 very different results. That's also true. And then the final one is capitalization matters, true or false. You can have them type in anything here because capitalization does not matter. I also like to spend a little bit of time going over Google tools such as Google News and Google Scholar. So they're 2 very useful tools for students, and just showing them, and again, for younger kids, Google Scholar probably wouldn't be appropriate, but at least letting them know that it exists. And again, depending on what age, Google Scholar can be a very useful resource for students. And then we have to talk about Wikipedia. It is the elephant in the room, but we can't ignore it. And we need to tell students there are ways you can use Wikipedia, but you have to do it responsibly. And so again, we're going to go through this fast. I do have a full video on this, or you can watch last year's research video where I spent a lot more time. But using the references in Wikipedia that lead you to these resources at the bottom is a great way to start any research project, because it takes you to sources that are credible that you can use. And again, I'm going through this fast, but it's important that students know, yes, you can cite the references from Wikipedia. No, you can't cite Wikipedia. And so this brings us to our fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. Now, these are all words that students hear, probably use, but don't necessarily know what they mean. Now, the stuff we've talked about before is all kind of scholarly research, which is really important. But this is the kind of stuff that students encounter every single day, whether it's on social media, whether it's, their friends talking about stuff, or they're doing their own research. So we're going to do a deep dive into how students can handle all of this stuff. So before we hop into the heavy stuff, I like to throw this up on the board and ask my students, which of these is fake? And students kind of know about deepfakes. If not, you can give them a quick overview of a deepfake being a person or face that is artificially created. And so they'll have fun guessing which of these is fake. And it's kind of a trick because all of them are fake. These are all computer created faces. And I do have a link in the notes of the presentation that links to more of these. So if you want to create your own, there's a ton of them out there. And then you can have a little bit more fun and say, okay, that was a trick. Now, one of these is real, one is fake. Which one is real? I don't know, can you guys at home guess? If you said it was that one, then you are correct. And then again, there's a couple more you can have the students do as well. And then just give them kind of the overview of deepfakes. Now, why I like to start off with this is because it gets the students thinking, you can't believe everything you see and also hear, which is what we're really going to get into, because students need to be critical thinkers. Start questioning, right? At young ages, we teach students question everything, and then at some point we kind of get away from that, and even as adults, some of us just take the information we're given and accept it. And what we're going to show them is to know the difference. So fake news, disinformation, misinformation are not all necessarily interchangeable. So fake news is a news story that's created to be shared and distributed to generate revenue or promote/discredit a public figure, political movement, etc. Disinformation is false information that's shared and distributed with the intention to mislead. Now, misinformation is also false information that's shared and distributed, but it's by someone who doesn't know the information they're sharing is false. So I put up this fun little graphic at the top there. Fake news is disinformation. Disinformation can be fake news, and misinformation is neither fake news nor disinformation. So I like to give a little history lesson here and explain that when TV news first came out and was first created, it was actually run at a loss. So television stations actually lost money on the news, but now in an era of media conglomerates, TV news stations are expected to make money. And fundamentally, that's an issue, because now it's not just necessarily about reporting the facts to help the audience and the people, right? It's not a public service necessarily, at least not the cable news and network news that we were referring to. Now they are there to make money. And so the next couple slides are really important for students to see that, because they need to understand that news isn't what it used to be. And really, this is an awesome graphic because there's really 6 major companies that own virtually all the news in the country. So you can take a look and you can see who runs most of the news. And you can see that AT&T / Time Warner owns CNN. Disney owns ABC and ESPN. Comcast owns NBC. Viacom owns CBS. Fox owns Fox News. So all the major cable news and network news that we know are all owned by only 6 companies, which is a lot of power for these to have. And if you really want to get your students thinking about bias, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, you can really ask them, well, if something happened to Disney, could you trust ABC to be a fair reporter of that story? Or if something happened to Comcast, can you trust NBC to be a fair source of information? And that's not to say that these news stations would be biased, although I think you'd probably expect them to be. It at least gets students understanding where stories are coming from. So talking about political bias in the news can always be a very touchy subject. And I'm just going to caution everybody, you guys know your students, you know your parents, and I don't like to touch politics with a 10-foot pole in the classroom. But when we're talking about research, it's very important that students understand what political bias is. Now, many of them, again, depending on the age of your students, come from a house where they might only watch one news station. And that's completely acceptable. That's normal. But we want our students to be well-rounded individuals. We want them to be critical thinkers who think for themselves. We don't want them to live inside the echo chambers that so many people live in. So to get them to break out of that and to be a unique individual person with their own thoughts, we need to teach them how to get information from these sides so that they can form their own opinions. And when I first started teaching language arts 9 years ago, I did like the Northwest tree octopus. And at the time, I thought that was what students needed to know, like what's real, what's not real. But now there's so many shades of gray between what's real and what's not real that's not quite as cut and dry as the Northwest tree octopus. So these next few slides are going to really help students develop their own personal radar detector for detecting media bias. So here's just a quick slide, and again, you can explain all these things to the students. You can just pick a few that are really used more often than others, but it's important for students to know what these are. I'm not going to go through them all now because this video is running a little bit long, but it is important that they understand these are the things to be looking for when you're watching the news. Now, there's no perfect media bias ratings out there, but I actually find this one from allsides.com to be fairly accurate. And what it shows is media sources that are center, lean left and lean right, and then left and right. So again, you might disagree with some of these. I think it's fairly accurate. I think there's a couple that are probably off. But in terms of giving our students a bird's eye view of the landscape, I think this does a pretty great job. Now, what I like to tell my students is, you know, that these are the different sides politically. If you want to be a well-rounded person and you want to truly understand stuff, you need to find sources from all 3 columns. You need to be able to see things that are center. You need to see things that are leaning left and leaning right. So if there's a news story, if you read just one side, you're not getting the full story. But if you can see it from the center, the left, and the right, you're going to get a full picture of the news story. What they might also find is that certain news stories aren't actually covered by all the sides. Only one side might be covering something, and that speaks volumes as well. Now, here's some examples from allsides.com. There are tons of different examples they have. I tried to pick some that were very balanced so that students can see, some from the places that lean left, some from the places that lean right, and then, as you'll see in a minute, some that are down the center. And a lot of it is just spin. You can see by using certain vocabulary, some of these news sources try to evoke emotion. And getting students to start looking for that. Like, are they just telling facts, or are they using language that's going to help me feel something? So there's examples from the Washington Post, the Daily Wire, and again, I won't go through all of these, but you can see a lot of them are slant or assuming things that aren't facts. And again, I always like to point out, the Hill and the AP articles, because those are listed as the center. And then, of course, we've got a couple from CNN and Fox News. And again, I love this George Carlin quote. It says, "Don't just teach your children to read, teach them to question what they read, teach them to question everything, because they should be questioning the news." It's not a bad thing to actually question the news. And I've got a couple examples here. I like to show them this video clip of ABC, which this past year, they used footage from a Kentucky machine gun event, and they passed it off as footage from Syria. So they darkened it, made it grainy, and they used terms like slaughter, fury, horrific reports of atrocity to create a story that didn't actually exist. And it's also important to show that it's not new. Here's a story that dates back to 1992, where the producers of Dateline rigged up a Chevy truck's fuel tank, and they had remotely controlled model rocket engines that initiated an explosion. So they completely made up a story, and they were sued by GM. And again, this was 1992, very different political world than we live in now. So they actually got on the air, they apologized. But again, it's really important that students know not to just trust everything you're seeing. There are some fact-checking websites I like to refer my students to. Again, it's not a bad idea to even question the fact-checkers. And again, I have some examples here where all sides show some of the fact-checkers lean one way or the other and aren't just necessarily centric, but it is good for students to be able to get that idea. There's also this great slide here I love from Michael Caulfield, who helps explain to students ways that they can identify credible information. This video is going really long, so I won't talk about it too much here, but you can see the slide. You can check out Michael Caulfield's website for more information. And just some quick hitters on things to look for with fake news. URL is a big one. There's a lot of fake news sites out there that add a couple letters in the URL, like abcnews.com.co. They slide in an extra couple letters there to make themselves look like ABC News, and really, it's just completely fake news. Other signs are websites that sound like a real news site but aren't. Things like worlddailynewsreport.com or nationalreport.net. So here's worldnewsdailyreport.com, which has an article that says Barack Obama announces intentions to run as president of Kenya in 2021. And again, I'd like to show the students here a quick search of Obama, Kenya 2021 shows mostly things that come back. You got a fact checker right at the top and say, no, this actually isn't true. So anytime they have a question about a story, search, go upstream, see if other people are talking about this. Where did that news come from? And don't be afraid to go back and do your own research. It's also important for students to understand what satire is. And so these are meant to be fun. These are not meant to be fake news or disinformation. These are just meant to be funny. So here's a couple websites I put up, the Babylon Bee, the Onion. Those are two of the bigger, more satirical news websites. And again, the last thing I like to show them is that a lot of the fake news sites have a lot of ads that are disproportionate. Most of them are inappropriate, so I actually don't have any examples to show them because it's all stuff that I wouldn't want to show students in school and I wouldn't want to subject them to. But when they see that, they're probably in a place they shouldn't be. And then one last thing is, I love this. onthemedia.org has this really awesome fake news edition of the Breaking News Consumer's Handbook. And these are all things to look out for to help identify fake news. And then one of my favorite tools to get students in and using is Factitious. Factitious is a game that you can set the level. So easy is middle school, medium is high school, hard is college. And it shows students an actual story. So like here's one that says it was so hot on Vienna subway that commuters were given free deodorant, which sounds ridiculous, but you can see as you scroll down, it's actually from the Washington Post. Students can read it and decide, is that fake or is it not? Turns out it was correct. And there's a whole bunch of stories like that, and they can earn points and move on to the harder levels. So I know this is a really loaded topic. That was a ton of information. I'm sorry this video went so long, but this is such an important skill for our students to know that I really want to get as much information into this presentation as possible. I know it's not comprehensive and I've still missed a lot of stuff. So if there's things that you think I should add for my next presentation or things that you're doing to teach research that you'd like to share, please, please, please leave it in the comments below or reach out to me on Twitter at Dan Spada, or you can visit my website, danielspada.com. If you did enjoy this, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel so that you can see all of our future videos. And if you know of a teacher that could use this, please share the presentation with the link in the description below or share this video with them. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.